Hello, and welcome back to Mellohi, a DreamXD podcast. This is episode 33, and today we'll be discussing Tommy's character, DreamXD, and the impact of Lemamberg. As always, we refer to the characters by name and specify when we're talking about the writers, and we also try to focus more on analysis. Alright, we're back. After Christmas. We took a break for anyone who's not, following our Twitter or in our Discord. So that's why there wasn't an episode last week, because
Christmas holidays.
Yeah, so Christmas Eve and Christmas fell on our usual recording days, and then obviously, people tend to be busy with family.
Yeah, sorry, holidays, not a lot of time to edit, but that's okay, because not much happened while we were gone.
Everybody's like, yay, the Lord Droughts finally over, and then Christmas hits.
Yeah, Christmas hits, and suddenly it's like, okay, everyone's busy, no one's doing anything. So we did have...
And then Bad Boy Halo comes in with plans for a New Year's celebration and a lot of explosives.
Yeah.
How much TNT it would take to kill someone in full netherite.
Which is,
Sus.
sus to say the least.
I'm so sad we didn't end up using the Among Us bunker.
Yeah, I want the Among Us
Hopefully it will be used in the future.
Maybe we'll get it used now that BBH seems like he's gonna blow them all up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. He did talk about Quackity a lot, so, it seems fair to say that Quackity could be what it's for.
It would fit in with the fact that the egg finale is supposed to happen sometime, and obviously Quackity is one of the largest enemies of the egg at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It would make sense that Bad would want to go against him.
Yeah, definitely. We haven't seen much from the egg in a while.
I mean, there's been just Bad's yeah, we're gonna have the final egg stream in a month from now, and then it never happened.
He said that at the end of summer or something. And now it's nearly the
in
next
the middle
year.
of winter now. He's late by a whole half year.
Oh my god, when did the Red Banquet happen? That was
so fucking long ago.
Start of summer or something.
April?
God.
It has been a really long time. Besides the main egg lore, what else have we seen?
I mean, there's a lot of prison stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of prison stuff. But as far as the egg, what have we seen with the egg? Sam finally went and tested it with, I think,
with
Tommy, right? That was a while ago.
And then we never saw the egg again.
Then he figured out he couldn't move it, right? It's not movable.
I think what he found out was that it hurts people when you try and break blocks, and that around it, and that it's explosion proof.
Yeah,
and that's about it.
There's not much you can do with that. You can't explode it to destroy it. You can't break pieces of it to destroy it. There isn't a Minecraft mechanic way to move the whole thing unless you somehow get a bunch of pistons underneath it and try and just push it up out of the ground. But that sounds like a terrible idea. I feel and it's so weird the way that they're Sam handles the egg, because wasn't he a part of wasn't he aware of some of the tests and precautions that they put in place in the first place for the egg with trying to barricade it in, surround it with holy water, encase it in obsidian, and all it did was absorb it and get stronger? It was what? Sam, you're supposed to be smart.
I think it was more a case of its power was concentrated by the obsidian. So when it was broken out of the obsidian, it grew at a much faster rate.
Yeah.
But probably not as much as it would have if it probably didn't grow as much as it would have if it had been allowed to grow uninterrupted from the start.
I mean, to give Sam some credit, it's not like he's doing all those things again. And what he's discovered is actually new, and wasn't something that the egg could do when they did those original tests.
That's true. You could blow up the egg before. It's gotten stronger.
It has definitely gotten stronger.
Which isn't a good thing. Unless you want the egg to win, and you want the egg to, destroy the server and take over everybody and get some creepy... Man, we don't talk talk enough about how awesome the egg, like, okay, well, never mind. We mention it every single time we bring up the egg. But honestly, the egg is like a genre, like an arc or a concept for a storyline in the DreamXD is so different to literally everything. The only thing we've had even close to it was the Dream Hunters, which is where the Egg Pyre arc started, because it started with Bad digging a cave thing for the Dream Hunters, which never got used because they only made him do it to get him out of the way.
Yeah.
But like that was the closest we got to this more like supernatural possession type stuff. And then we went into the egg.
I guess now we've been seeing more of DreamXD, who is also going the sort of supernatural way.
I just find it very funny how DreamXD just has a thing.
Although it's
he has
obviously
an
a very
out
different
for
story.
bad for some reason. He just hates them.
Well,
it's never explained.
I like the theory that DreamXD is the egg, or the egg is connected to DreamXD, and the reason he hates Bad Boy Halo so much is because he thinks Bad Boy Halo, like, is the one who, like, royally screwed up his plans, and now he's just like, ugh, this guy, all he ever talks about is Skeppy this and Skeppy that, and I just want to support my best friend Skeppy.
I also interpret it, like,
I think it's
the opposite way. Like, XD doesn't like Bad because Bad works with the egg, and XD doesn't like the egg, which is
they're rivals.
because, like,
they feed on the same
water
power.
from Church Pine, which he's associated with.
Yeah, there is the opposite route. I just think, I don't remember who it was. It might have been Finding Joy? I don't know. Someone on Tumblr was talking about how the DreamXD voice sounds very similar to
it's the same voice
the egg voice sometimes.
And
yeah,
like,
it is. And then I think there was like,
if you listen to the egg conversation with Foolish, it's a very the voice, the sort of like how they speak is different.
Yeah, it was the what was it? Oh, I remembered. There was part of it was this big theory,
They have the
or
same
well, the small
ringtone
theory,
for
I guess,
Nightmares.
attached. Yeah, it was that. It was the lullaby, like, music box music that played when DreamXD came out of a nightmare, and then the egg was talking to Foolish or Rambo or someone, and was that music sort of played behind them, and people were like, oh, there's a connection there, and I'm like, well, there's the more obvious idea of just that DreamXD came out of someone who was having a nightmare about the egg, which, you know, that's the pretty basic answer.
I mean,
and then there's the more conspiracy theory.
I don't remember it very well anymore because I wasn't paying too much attention. But didn't it happen because he was like, it sounded like an alarm that told him that Bad was going to sleep. So he's like, oh, gotta go. I need to go and make Bad's nightmares worse.
I don't remember if it was, no, I think it was him coming out of a nightmare, not him going into one, wasn't it? Like, wasn't he like talking to Foolish and then he vanished for a little bit, and then when he came back, he's like, sorry, I just came out of a nightmare or whatever, and that music was sort of playing as he came in, and it was, I don't know, I think Bad showed up in that stream at one point, and so maybe it was Bad's nightmares. DreamXD seems to have
XD
a fascination
loves
with
making
ruining his
miserable.
life. Yeah, he hates him. It's awful. It's just like, man, I know you don't like BBH, but like, leave the guy alone. But you know, DreamXD says he's pure evil.
Claims to be pure
likes to
evil,
mess
and then
with
just
people.
gets so sobbed when he calls Foolish a friend.
I know, he's so freaking awkward about it. He's just like, well, we're not there yet.
We're not best friends, but we're friends. It's an upgrade from Pet.
That's true. It is an upgrade. Oh man, DreamXD, the Egg Pyre, all of the supernatural stuff has a lot of very unanswered questions about it. Like the Egg Pyre, there's still a lot we don't know what's going to happen with that. We don't know what the egg, because I think a lot of us thought that the Egg Banquet was going to be like the big finale of the Egg Pyre arc, but it wasn't. It was supposed, I think it was supposed to be like the lead up to something even bigger, but that hasn't happened yet. So what that is, nobody knows, except that it needs people to die. The revival book we still have a lot of questions on, even though we're like figuring out how it works. There's a second mysterious book. We still got Boomer's hat and what that like feels like and connects to the revival book. We have whatever the hell Sam's problem is with having multiple bodies. The egg, DreamXD is very, very sus, other than the fact, like, all we know really consistently about him is that he rules the end is his kingdom, and he gets very pissed off when you suggest that
he gets pissed off when you ask for creative mode or any sort of flight.
Was he pissed off when he asked for creative mode, or did he just think it was boring?
Oh, so you want to be immortal and have infinite items and infinite flight? And then Fool just starts spazzing up like, I might as well just, I knew I was going to get it, but I might as well just ask.
Yeah, there were things that he asked for that, like, pissed off, DreamXD.
It was sort of, like, kind of pissed off, but more like, are you fucking serious? Do you really think I'm gonna give you that? Sort of way.
Yeah.
What we know, so from what XD's told us, he does not have a sense of time. So anything he says related to time means nothing. Don't trust him. Don't trust his words. Unreliable narrator. But also, he's mentioned to Foolish, he's a fucking dork first off, but he's mentioned to Foolish that that everything is his kingdom and that everything is his, anything anyone builds. So that includes the overworld. It's not just the end he rules. He rules the overworld, the overworld. He considers the overworld and everything, and this entire server, every person on it, every block that's built or touched or loaded to be his.
Yeah, basically.
So it's not just the end.
Yeah, it's not just the end. He's very, I've described this before. He's very, like, arrogant, but very, very defensive.
He's a little
like,
baby boy, okay? He's only been around for a year.
He is really defensive now that I think about it, though. Like he's very, very confident and like arrogant and stuff. Cause like, I mean, he's God. He's the only God as far as he's concerned. He doesn't really care about anyone else. He's like, I am God. I control everything. Everything's mine. Don't get sassy with me or I will smite you. But then he gets so defensive anytime anyone even makes a comment that sounds like they think that they can also be good or
it's more
or like as powerful.
When they question
or
his
if it's criticism. Yeah, if they question him, if they sort of like criticize him, if they even call him like a small name, it's like, whoa, buddy.
Foolish when
like, and that's like, you know,
Foolish every time.
Anything Foolish says, half of it is, I'm gonna kill you for saying that, and half of it is, yeah, okay, you're funny. You're a good pet. And it's just like, okay. Like, and it's a very good, like, I think Dream, content creator Dream does a very, like, good depiction of, like, that kind of, like, the only God there is that isn't, like, you know, the, like, omnipotent,
he doesn't
like,
know
I am so regal and above everything. No, he's very childish.
He's a fucking kid. Like, when I say that he was probably born a year, he's only, like, in actuality only about a year old, it's like, that, well, first of all, that's when the Dream Hunters happened.
More like a year and a half.
Yeah, it is almost
if we're interpreting him as him being born with the DSMP.
I mean, you could interpret it as him having been born when the DSMP was created, but
he's less than 2
more
years.
like, because like I don't think Dream's the kind of person who likes to retcon
Oh well, yeah. I
stuff.
suppose it depends if you interpret it as him being as old as the DSMP or him being as old as the Dream.
I believe that his origin started with the Dream Hunters, because that is when the DreamXD account first appeared, and even if it was he only really came into concrete being during his encounter with Technically, that's still like less than a year old. He's so young. Like, you hear about him talk about things and how he only knows about stuff because he's watched them happen in other people's dreams. But he doesn't know about things like karaoke, and he doesn't know about stuff like what a pet is or what time is. He doesn't know about anything.
Yeah, actually,
really, he's like
there's
so
something,
naive.
There is something interesting about his whole age thing, though, because he says, I'm pretty sure, that he's like billions and billions
That's his
of years
perspective,
old.
though.
He says
but
that.
But he doesn't have a concept of time. So anything he says about time, you just don't, you don't trust it, you don't follow it. It's probably wrong.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like,
there's also the fact that he's kind of like associated with limbo, and in limbo time moves faster. So
yeah, I was gonna say, that was the other thing.
We don't really know. Like, he's talked about, like, having to use up energy to manifest physically. So presumably, when he isn't manifesting physically in the world, he's somewhere else.
He's a disembodied voice.
Whether that's in dreams or it's in limbo.
There's this whole thing with, like, well, we all know the timeline on DreamXD is fucked, to be fair. It's the most scuffed thing
Tommy
to try
lives in 2x time.
About.
Wilbur apparently has thought, what? The war was a year? Huh? Prison arc is normal time. I think Hagar was normal
Prison
time
arc is normal time. Technos is more. I think, yeah. See, that's the thing. It's really just, like, Wilbur and Tommy, I think, who have, like, a really scuffed version of time. And whether that's just because they're both people who like to exaggerate. Like, Tommy, like, character Tommy, and I guess CC Tommy as well, I think, kind of does the same thing, which, you know, it's not a bad thing. But, like, they have a tendency, like, they play up things, right? They, like, they exaggerate. Like, he's like, you have been, and he always, like, extrapolates. So, like, he could, like, I see one of the quotes that goes around a lot of the time to say that, like, well, exile was for months. Was that, I guess Tommy at some point said something like, he's been tormenting me for months. And a lot of people took that to mean specifically exile, but honestly, that could reference his just entire time on the DreamXD. Right. And it doesn't have anything necessarily to do specifically with exile, but he is a character who, like, likes to exaggerate.
He loves exaggerating
and, like,
things.
He plays things up, and maybe that's because they do feel that way to him, and he's just a very,
emotional.
Kind of an over-the-top emotional person, yeah. And Wilbur plays things up for, I think,
Dramatics.
sort of the dramaticism of it all. Like, he I think Tommy does it out of emotion, Wilbur does it out of dramaticism and making himself seem like I think he does it to make things seem more important than they necessarily are.
Oh yeah, recently I realized something about Tommy's character. Right, so are you familiar with the trope jerk with a heart of gold?
Yeah, that's a decent one.
That's
for Tommy.
Tommy.
Yeah. He's a jerk.
I mean, he's like 99%
he's got a good heart
jerk
underneath
and
there.
1% heart of gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those characters that, like,
the heart comes out when it's most important.
Yeah, he's one of those characters that, like, if he was the actual, like, protagonist main character of a book, his sort of, like, course over the series would be, like, he's an absolute, like, jerk at the beginning, and then he goes through all these trials and tribulations, he finds actual friends that he doesn't treat like dog shit, and he sort of grows and becomes a better person by the end, and sort of, you know, that'd be his, like, character development in an actual book. But that's not how the DreamXD works.
It's not how the DreamXD works.
Yeah,
so,
that's
like,
what I was
Tommy
gonna say.
is just kind of a jerk. And, like, he's always been kind of a jerk, and he kind of stays as a jerk. Like, there's a point in time where he literally goes, like, why am I asking people for stuff? I should just steal it. I don't want to be a good person. So, like, he's not, like, he wants to be a good person to his friends. He wants to help his friends. He wants to make sure his friends are safe and okay and stuff like that. But, everyone else can basically go fuck themselves with him. He doesn't care.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing about Tommy, right?
He's, like, fundamentally a very selfish character. Like, off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything
Purely
he's done that's been
selfless.
truly selfless.
It's a little...
There is, but
like,
it's limited.
Even when, like, he's helping his friends, like, it's for the purpose of his friends are happy and they keep liking him and stuff, you know?
He's a bit of a... I say it a lot that he's a bit of a self-centered character, that to him the world revolves around himself, and the only thing that matters are him and his closest people. Nothing else does.
Yeah.
And so
he does tend to view the world in sort of like, I'm the main character sort of way. And I think it's only been recently after all of the bad shit that happened to him, that he's been like, I don't want to be the main character. I don't want anyone off this train. I just want me and my friends, and I give a shit about nothing else. Fuck off. And he's not, like, he's a character that sort of, like, put himself, and I think he says it to Foolish at one point, like, how it used to be so easy to say, like, we're the heroes, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. But now it's obviously that's not what it is. He's like, no one's a good guy, no one's a bad guy, or no one's a good guy, everyone's just, like, kind of shit. And it just depends on whose point of view you're looking at. So, like, he's a character who very much started as, like, I'm the big, important main character, and then over time, he's just been like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore.
How did we get here? We were talking about we were talking about DreamXD, then we jumped all the way to Tommy. I can't remember. There's a gap in my memory.
Let's see, what were we talking about? We started with Bad and how he plans to probably blow up Quackity, or someone with a lot of netherite.
We got to XD.
We got to XD, yeah. And then we've been talking about Tommy. What was I gonna say? I had something I wanted to say about Tommy as a character, other than the whole, like, he thinks of himself as the main character bit. What was it? I think, he is like I think we talked about this before, that he is like a self-centered character, right? Like, his point of view of the world is very centric on himself and the people around him. And that's not necessarily, like,
it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Like, it's a character. It's a character trait. It's not necessarily like a good trait or a bad trait.
Honestly, like,
it's something that's like, yeah, it's something that's good or bad depending on the circumstances.
Like, only caring about, like, not being able to, like, bother to care about people you barely know. It's like, that's a pretty normal trait, to be honest. Like, if you were, who are you gonna save from an oncoming train?
It also means, like, he tends to be very loyal to his friends.
Stranger you've never met.
Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. Right, yes. Okay, so Tommy is this sort of self-centric character, as we've all been saying, which puts him in a very interesting sort of opposition to people like Techno and Dream, because Dream and Techno's goals almost universally are focused on what they believe the greater good is. Like, it's not about themselves, it's not about their friends, it's about the people as a whole. So, like, Techno's whole thing is, like, government brings down people in general, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Dream is, like...
that's, like, when the main things, especially with, like, Techno versus Tommy, is Tommy's viewing things on the small scale. How is this going to directly impact me and my closest friends? While Techno is thinking in the wider scale, what are the long-term impacts of this going to be for everyone here?
And that's
like Doomsday, like, getting rid of Lamberg.
Sliding scale of I guess if we had a sliding scale of being self-centered to being greater good, Tommy would be at one end and Dream would be at the other. Because, like, even though Dream has friends and he really cares about those friends, he's still willing to give up those friendships for the greater good. Techno, on the other hand, Techno would be in the middle between the two. Techno wants to do things for the greater good. He wants to help other people, even if he's not necessarily close to them. But he also doesn't want to lose his own people in the process. And he's not willing to give them up.
And it is interesting to see that that sort of, like, foil conflict between them, because it is interesting, because Tommy also, it goes to show sort of how they feel about things as well, because, like, when, for Techno and for Dream, Lamberg wasn't really a personal thing. Dream wanted Lamberg gone because, it was, like, there was, it was a little bit fueled by personal, like, motives, but it was also, a lot of it was, like, a lot of it, like, how do I explain this? The smaller bits of it are that personal thing. Like, Lamberg, in Dream's point of view, probably ruined his life. Techno, it was he and his friend were persecuted by Lamberg, so it was a personal thing.
Techno was killed by Lamberg, and that they wouldn't stop until he was permanent dead. So it was very personal for Techno on why he wanted to destroy it.
It was personal,
but for Philza,
but there was, like,
it was a government
a bigger ideology behind it. Yeah, like, I think Techno, it was, like, partially a personal thing, a personal safety thing, but it was also, like, a sort of a part of a bigger ideology. In his eyes, government's bad.
I think it was an ideological thing, but, like, what sparked him into action was a personal thing, you know?
Yeah, And so, like, for him and for Dream, it was sort of, like, it was partially personal, but it was mainly, or, like, the bigger sort of, like, heavier thing behind it was sort of, like, an ideological and goal-driven thing. Like, Dream, it was, yeah, L'Manberg pretty much ruined his life, but also, it was ruining the server, and that's what he's in charge of, and it's the source of the conflict, and he has to get rid of it. Techno... It was, yes, it was partially that he was, like, personally persecuted by them along with his friends, but it was also that he'd seen what government did to other people. He saw what it did to Wilbur. He saw what it did
and
to
also,
Schlatt
like, that
and Nikki
personal
and
prosecution
Tubbo and...
sort of proved his point.
Yeah.
That they were going to keep acting in that way.
It proved to him... The personal stuff just sort of proved his greater, like, already strong beliefs that government was bad, because them persecuting him and sort of that sort of corruption that had just been persistent throughout L'Manberg became, like, a bigger thing. Tommy, on the other hand, all of the things that happened to him, he takes as personal. Yeah. It's never
anyone else. It's never about some greater good. It's never about other people. It's always about him. So, like, when he's up on that obsidian grid during Doomsday, he asks Dream, why did you do this? He asks, why did you target L'Manberg? Why didn't you just go after me?
Yeah,
he
it's
makes
like
it
this
about himself.
inability to see the bigger picture. Yeah, it's always, he takes things very personally. He thinks if someone is doing something,
it has to be
to him
because
it has to be about him and not something else. So,
like, Dream
destroying L'Manberg.
Although admittedly, like, to be fair, at that point, that's kind of like what Dream was trying to convince.
Before,
yeah,
and
the
like, thing is, though, before he says that, actually says, like, why did I do it? It's a new beginning. He says, with every destruction comes a new beginning. And
but yeah, just like I'm referring
Tommy
more to stuff like the
continues to
Exile
insist
arc and
that
everything.
this is about him. Dreams literally switches tracks because Tommy's not going to listen to him for what he says. He's only going to listen to what he thinks Dream should say or what he wants to hear.
Yeah.
And what he wants to hear is that L'Manberg
this...
was destroyed because Dream was trying to get after him.
Yeah, it's another example of Dream playing into what other people's values and beliefs and sort of ideologies and the way they see the world. So he's playing into the fact that Tommy thinks that most things that are bad that happen to him or his friends are because of him, which, honestly, someone get that kid some therapy. I hadn't really thought about this now, but yeah, I hadn't really thought about this by now, but that is actually really sad that in Tommy's view of the world, it began as something sort of, like, selfish and how, like, everything revolved around him, everything was for him, and if you're not on his side, then you're in his way, and blah, 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 blah. It was more of a selfish thing, but now after, like, all of the trauma and the bullshit that he's been through, and I want to say that some of this is going to be Wilbur's fault. Because Wilbur definitely played into this.
It's probably Wilbur's fault as well.
Probably Wilbur traumatized the
long
shit out of the kid
during Octopia.
But it is interesting to see.
And Wilbur does have this whole sort of thing about narratives.
Yeah.
And it's very black and white thinking about being either the good guy or the bad guy. And we have seen some hints that even if Tommy used to believe that, he doesn't really, like, he's starting to not believe it anymore.
Yeah.
Which is some interesting character development.
Yeah.
Although we haven't seen much of it.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see how Tommy went from, he's kept this sort of, like, self-centric world point of view, but it's gone from very sort of selfish and it's all about me to it's all about me, and that means everything's my fault. And I don't want it to be about me anymore. So he still, like, thinks of everything in terms of himself, but it's, like, it's this weird sort of, what is it called? I want to see, like, he's got, like, a persecution complex where he thinks everyone's after him, which he does have that to some extent. It's just, fueled by truth, because there are a lot of people out for him. But it's like, I don't want to say it's like a guilt complex? A victim complex, maybe? I don't know. It's interesting to me that he's gone and, like, sort of adapted or grown this, like, issue of being like terrible things happening to the world around him, and in his eye, it's always because of him. Exile was because of him. L'Manber getting destroyed in Doomsday was because of him.
Wilbur getting revived.
And I think Wilbur getting revived was because of him. Ghostbird dying was because of him. And I'm sure, man, no, that's just really sad.
That is kinda sad. Not gonna lie.
It's really sad. Like, I don't usually think about, you know, like, everyone knows Tommy's, like, traumatized, right? Like, that's 90% of the fandom defines him, his one personality trait, as being traumatized, which, by the way, is terrible characterization, guys.
He's either traumatized
way more than that.
or annoying, or traumatized and annoying.
Yeah, he's got way...
is what, like, half the fandom considers his character.
I don't even like Tommy's character super much. Like, I think he's kind of boring. But there is more to his character and his character's personality than just traumatized and annoying.
Honestly, like, I do actually quite like Tommy's character. I just think my main issue is that his character has been pretty stagnant. But I think a lot of that is just because of him not having much opportunity
also,
to, you know, do anything.
CC
or be in conflicts that...
It is... I think...
But just not having much opportunity to get into conflicts or interact with characters that would push character development.
I think Sparrow really sort of put it back that he gets worse and then he recovers from getting worse and then he gets worse again.
Yeah, it's like
it's a constant cycle.
I don't know, he's
one step
he's
forwards,
very much stuck in a cycle. And it is kind of
like, I feel like for him to be like a proper likable character in, like, to me, is if something happens that causes, like, a large shift in his opinions. Because one of the things that is sort of frustrating about him is how he'll get this idea of something and then just stick with that.
Yeah.
And not really change it very much.
He's a very
like, for instance, something that's maybe like him properly standing up to Wilbur. That would be really interesting to see, and it'll be a really interesting bit of character development. So that's something that I think would be cool to see in the future with his character.
But like, but it's one of those things where he doesn't listen. Tommy isn't a character that listens to other people. He listens to himself and occasionally to Tubbo. But he'll, like, if Tubbo doesn't agree with him, he's gonna just stick with himself, basically. And the one person he did listen to was terrible to listen to, and that was Wilbur. So
yeah, not a good influence.
Honestly, I think Tommy has this thing where he's sort of very much a follower rather than a leader.
Yeah.
I think that's the source of a lot of his problems.
I think
that's fair.
It's like everyone's like, oh, like Tubbo's the one that's the pushover now, and that was Tommy. Just because he, like, doesn't go along with what people say a lot, doesn't mean that he's not, like, more of a follower.
He looks to other people for guidance.
Like, Tubbo's the one that has, like, all these plans and stuff that he comes up with himself and carries out, and he's the one that, like, tells people to do things for him, compared to Tommy, who, like, outside of maybe demanding stuff,
Tommy is very good at,
even when he's technically, like, in some kind of leadership role,
he's
like being in charge of the hotel, he doesn't really do
he's not
much
good at,
with
like,
that, even when he has technical underlings.
He's not good at, like, responsibility stuff. But also, like, being able, like, he just doesn't have the know-how, really, or the experience. And he doesn't have any precedent for, like, being an actual proper leader. He's just sort of following along to what other people are doing. Even though he doesn't, he doesn't listen to orders, necessarily. But
it is interesting to think of him in a follower and leader capacity, because Tommy usually gets made the leader, right? Like, when they were prepping for Doomsday, I don't know if he just sort of established himself as in charge, but people seem to, like, think of him as the one in charge of defending Doomsday, or defending Landberg, I should say. And it is interesting to see him, because he's very much... early on, I think he tries to put himself in places of leadership to some extent, right? Like, he likes being listened to. And it is part of that sort of, like, selfish thing where, like, he thinks the world sort of revolves around him, so he's like, I want everyone to listen to me. And he's still like that, right? Like, he demands people listen to him and very rarely listens to anyone else. But he's not... And he does have some kind of, like, charisma about him that does sort of play well into being the leader, right? Like, he's got a force of spirit behind him.
He's loud
so
enough.
Obviously,
that no one else.
People don't have a choice but to listen to him.
People can't speak over him.
But he's not good at leading.
I think part of it is like he's not proactive.
He's very
basically.
reactive unless he's about to get clout, in which case he will go and kill Dream for the clout.
But like, yeah, he tends to just like react to stuff that's happening. Like, oh, Technoblade and Filza and Dream are going to attack the Manberg. We have to defend the Manberg.
Yeah, he's not a very proactive character, is he? He's usually...
And even, like, if you compare, like, how he reacted, like, what he did after he and Tubbo decided to go after Dream, compared to what Tubbo did. Because he, like, got actual gear and stuff, and presumably collected stuff to hire puns. And then Tubbo built nukes. Like, one of those two is being a lot more proactive.
One of those two is not like the other.
He is a very, like, reactionary...
I feel like with recent developments with, last I remember at least, he was speaking with Filza and that whole schmack. I think like, Filza's advice isn't necessarily, like, good for his situation, but it is general life advice.
It's not, to be honest, I never ended up watching that stream because I wasn't interested in watching it. But from what I know of his advice, wasn't it basically you can't keep, like, holding on to these same sort of, like, coping mechanisms that haven't worked for you in the past, and also you need to actually learn the proper lesson of, hey, people are above items, something I thought he learned ages ago, but apparently didn't.
I mean, like, he tried to. He recognized that it was wrong to consider the discs above Tubbo, so that's why he gave the discs to Dream. But then he tried to, like, he almost put the discs above Tubbo again during the finale.
He hesitates. Yeah. And, like, yeah, he makes the right choice in the end, but that hesitation still matters. Like, both of those things matter. Like, the fact that he makes the right choice, that matters. But the hesitation to make the right choice very much matters. And it's exactly why he's not a hero.
Like,
because he cannot put himself...
isn't to save the people. It's to save what he cares about most.
And, like, there can be heroes that are like that, right? Like, those ones that, like, struggle to do the right thing. And it's like, a own very inspirational story of, like, the person who does the right thing but struggles to do so. Because it's very real... like, character. Like, a lot of people in real life, like, don't just do, like, they aren't, like, shining paragons of goodness. They struggle to make the right decisions every single day. So it makes Tommy, like, a very realistic character in that sense. But it does make him annoying as hell for a lot of people. Because it's like, no, obviously the choice you should make is to save your friend. Why are you hesitating? This should not be something you hesitate on. But it is very human of him, and you know, it fits very well with a character who struggles to think of other people other than himself to do that. And, like, the few times that he does, you know, put others above himself, they are very important. Like, him giving up the discs to establish the independence of L'Manberg, that was important. Him giving the discs... Why is it always the discs?
Because he considers the discs his most important item, and so, like, nothing else matters except the discs.
Well, hi there! Welcome to the episode Midpoint and the Mellohi Spotlight. If you're new, this is where we shout out a content creator from the DreamXD fandom who create art, write, analyze, and theorize. If you know any fan content creators who deserve a little more attention, make sure to let us know by commenting on our YouTube channel, adding us on Twitter, or joining our Discord server so that they might have a chance of being in the spotlight themselves. This week's spotlight is focusing on a really impressive animator by the name of Red Weewoo on YouTube. Red has made a lot of different animatics for the DreamXD about a large variety of characters, but their most impressive work so far is one that manages to cover almost the entirety of the events of Season 3, including the Eggpire, Lost Nevadas, the prison, Snowchester and the nukes, and Wilbur's revival. Almost every character who's been present in lore over the season shows up at least once, all in sync and tied into the lyrics of the song that they chose to accompany it. The animatic is called The Search, and it manages to really wonderfully cover the events of the server, multiple character stories and arcs, and the relationship between them. Every frame and scene has importance to it, and the characters are really amazingly portrayed, as well as having unique character designs. Additionally, they have some other animatics that you are definitely going to want to check out. From Ode to a Father, Memoriam, Topo's Dreams, Polo and Pan, the tribute to El Rapids, all of these are basically bangers that you should check out. If you want to, you can actually go and look them up at Red Wee Woo on YouTube, or if you want to check out some of their writing as they do that as well, you can check them out at the same name on Archive of Our Own. Thanks for listening, and back to the episode.
Alright, we're back. We had some minor technical difficulties, but we're just gonna record the rest of the episode now.
Ayo. Not too much longer that we need to talk. We were talking about Tommy and how he's sort of a self-centered character, which, you know, that's fine. That's kind of like a lot of people in real life are like that. It's not necessarily a bad thing as long as, you know, you make the right decisions in the right moments. And Tommy does do that, even if he hesitates between, you know, the discs and...
It takes a while, but he gets there eventually.
Yeah. He's got very, very strong emotional attachment to those discs, and,
Well, a lot of it is, like, what they represent to him.
Yeah.
They're sort of symbolic of, like, the early SMP before Lamamberg and all the wars
His
and
victory
chaos and
against
angst.
yeah.
Clout.
It is kind of interesting, that, yeah, I know, like, we all know that, like, character Tommy's, like, 17 at this point, right? He's not really, like, a complete child.
I mean, he's almost
anymore.
18.
Yeah, he's not really, like, he's still young, right? And so, like, he you know, no one should expect him or literally any of the characters on the SMP except, like, you know, Wilbur, Phil, Foolish, the people who are immortal.
As a general rule, like, in real life, your brain doesn't finish developing until, like, around 24. And I think, like, the last bit of the brain that finishes developing is the part that controls, like, impulse and decision making.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, like, yeah, so no one should be
Most of the DreamXD characters are very bad at making decisions.
Yeah, and no one should be expecting them to be
for a
the
reason.
most logically mature people. But Tommy's, like, interesting because, like, he was the youngest for a while, and everyone in the fandom tends to give him this sort of, like, he's a child. And it's
so
not
weird
really...
when you see people drawing him like he's, like, a 10-year-old.
Like 10 heads shorter than
and
Dream
he's, like,
when
one
they're
of the
same
tallest
height.
people.
Yeah. But it's not really that he's a
it's
child,
so weird.
because he's not a child anymore. He's a teenager,
DreamXD
almost
fan
an
artist
adult.
Red Flag drawing character Tommy shorter than everyone else.
And
Like, come on, the guy is tall in real
well, I'm
life.
thinking...
Literally, the only person taller than him would be Wilbur and Rambo.
And some other people
And
do
Bad
their
Boy Halo,
roleplay
technically.
shenanigans. But, yeah, but the funny thing is I think the reason that he gets such a rep as being a child is not because he's actually a child, but because he's childish. Which is not exactly the same thing. Because an adult or, like, a late teenager to be childish is not a good thing. He's not, like, very responsible, which is funny because he yells at Dream when he's chasing him around. He's like, you have the Revive book. You're not responsible. You shouldn't have it. It's just like, okay, Tommy.
You're not responsible either. That's a pot calling kettle black.
Yeah, like, I don't disagree based off of I could understand. Like, that is not the I don't know, that is not the call I would make if I was trying to convince someone to not, like, use me for necromantic experiments. My response would not be like, you have the power of a god, you have to be responsible of it. No, that I would be like, what's wrong with you? That is not something you can do to another person. That's not okay. It's like, that's not good. That there's no purpose that fulfills that is a good thing. And no, Tommy goes, you're not responsible, you shouldn't have this power. It's like, okay, Tommy, take it from him. What are you gonna do about it, man? Like, that is not Tommy makes some very interestingly weird, like, not good arguments. And he's a childish character, which I would say is sort of a character flaw, because it's not, like, you can be kind of childish and be, like, childish can be a good thing, right? Like, it can be, like, oh, well, they're, like, imaginative, and they're kind of, it's, like, it's kind of adorable sometimes, but he's, like, childish in the wrong way. He's got, like the spoiled, everyone should listen to me kind of thing.
I think we actually mentioned this the last episode, or the episode before, and actually, I'm not sure which one it was, but we mentioned in a recent episode the fact that both Tommy and Dream have the same thing of, like, preferring the early SMP and trying to go back to it, although it manifests in very different ways. And for Tommy, it's becoming very attached to the sort of, like, the disc war narrative of him against Dream, and this idea that Dream's the villain and he's the hero.
Yeah.
And it's always been about him, Dream, and the discs. Because that's, when he thinks about the early SMP, when he thinks about the time that he was happiest, that's what he thinks about.
War. Yeah. I want to say that actually a lot of the early SMP members want to go back to early SMP days.
I don't blame them. Everything's just gotten worse and worse and worse. Like, when you think about it,
I guess, but Dream and Tommy are especially noticeable because it informs their actions a lot.
Yeah.
And also they stream a little bit more. They don't, Dream doesn't stream, but Tommy does stream a little bit more than some of the other OG members.
Yeah. And he's always in character, pretty much, when he's on the SMP.
Ew.
But his character's, like, half him, so whatever. It's not important right now. It is interesting, though,
Yeah, he'll be just, like, winning around doing, like, random stuff, and then he'll drop, like, a line of lore that has everyone panicking or making angst or something.
and then he'll make, like,
and
a
then it will
real
just go right
life,
back
like,
to shenanigans.
shenanigan comment. Yeah, it's hard to keep track of what is actually Tommy and what is character.
Wasn't there a scene, one of his, like, a bit in one of his streams where he was, like, talking about Dream, and he was like, oh, Dream's great, and he's like, oh, wait, no, we're role-playing, I hate
We're
Dream.
still in lore, Dream sucks.
Yeah, he's done that before.
But he does tend to slip in and out of character a lot.
It's just interesting to look at, like, how the different characters, like, I made a post about this a while ago on Twitter. I asked people, it was like, you know, a lot of people say that L'Manberg was supposed to make the server better, right? It was, like, supposed to free people from tyranny, it was supposed to make people happier, it was supposed to be a place of freedom and friendship and family, and I made this tweet being like, you know, L'Manberg claimed to do all these things, but did it actually improve the lives of literally anyone? Like, not just L'Manbergian citizens, but anyone? And no, it did. It flat out didn't. It just drove a bunch of people into conflict rather than just, you know, 1 versus 1 or, like, 2v2, 1v2 sort of things. It turned small conflicts
instead of
into a matter of...
it turned into, like, wars.
Yeah. It's like, it's less feuding with your neighbor now and more feuding with an entire other, like, civilization and government with armies. And it's just like, wow, L'Manberg didn't improve hot shit. Like, I don't think there's a single person who could say that L'Manberg, like, had a positive effect on its members. And I guess part of that depends on, like, where you draw the line of, like, well, this is whose fault it is for everything. Because, like, some people are gonna say, well, L'Manberg was fine, it's literally just the fact that Dream didn't want it to exist that created conflict, which, you know, there's not really truth to that.
First off, that's wrong.
There's not really truth to that.
He didn't care if L'Manberg existed. What he didn't like was that they were exclusionists and isolationists and didn't want half the members of the server to be able to, like, go into L'Manberg at all.
It's like if, imagine this in, like, a real life AU. It's like Wilbur set
Walked
up
into Dream's house.
a hot dog ban in a public park. Then Sapnub got up and reported him for not having a proper permit to have a hot dog ban in a public park. And in response, Wilbur got the local teenagers to help him barricade the public park. And when Dream came along and said, hey, that's a public park, you can't stop people from coming in just because you don't like them, Wilbur went, no, you're a tyrant.
Yeah, basically.
So yeah, but it does depend, because some people do view it more of
Dream's like part of a local council or something.
There are people who view it more on the side of, well, L'Manberg making L'Manberg wasn't, great or whatever, but Dream could have just not interacted or whatever. Like, some people have this viewpoint, like, well, if Dream had just not declared war on them, then everything would have been fine. Which is also not true, because... and I do kind of understand that point, because, again, it depends on where you draw the line, right?
In response to them declaring that they weren't going to follow any of the rules.
Right, like, I'm not saying that necessarily this viewpoint's the most correct. Like, I don't personally agree with it. I'm just playing, I guess, devil's advocate. But, like, I can understand how some people will be like, well, maybe L'Manberg threw the first shot, but Dream's the one who reacted and threw the next shot, and sort of that, like, is like, two wrongs don't make a right or whatever kind of philosophy of like, well, maybe L'Manberg's like founding wasn't great, but Dream's the one who declared war on them, and so some people think that means that, L'Manberg would have created positivity if it hadn't been for Dream interfering. But again, I don't really think that's true because once you get past the L'Manberg War, you get the election, and that's like, that was supposed to be a fraudulent election run by Wilbur and Tommy so that they could win.
Like, if you just completely took Dream out of the equation, like, he went on holiday...
Basically.
Right before L'Manberg started, and just got so distracted they never come back. Like, he'd still have stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and shit still went wrong. Like, Dream wasn't on the SMP at that point in time, and shit still went wrong. Dream's not the problem here, obviously.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I was like, well, what, like, has L'Manberg, like, done anything positive? And a lot of the response I got to that was like, well, L'Manberg didn't have a chance because everyone else kept, like, stopping them. And I was like, I can see how you'd say that.
Of, like, downtime, didn't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I think... I think a lot of the good stuff L'Manberg did, like, L'Manberg didn't need to be there for that stuff to happen because it was just people being friends with each other.
Yeah.
You don't need a nation to be friends with your friends.
Exactly.
You don't need part of the same country. Actually, didn't L'Manberg quite literally divided everyone because Tubbo and Sapnap used to be friends, and then L'Manberg made it so that they couldn't be friends anymore because otherwise he'd be colluding with the enemy. Nikki wanted to be friends with Eric, but then Wilbur's coming like, you shouldn't be speaking with Eric, he's a traitor.
Wilbur's just a jealous hoe. I don't know how else to explain that. 95% of the problems on the server actually originate with Wilbur having a low self-esteem and a narcissism problem.
AU where instead of having a war, Dream just tells Wilbur that he has to go to therapy, and then nothing ever goes wrong on the server.
And it's just like, I'm not gonna say that Dream didn't cause any problems on the server, because he definitely exasperates. That's the word.
I mean, he caused about as much problems as your average Dream SMP character.
Yeah, like, I don't think you could really look at any of the characters and be like, everything is their fault, because... It's not true. Like, it's a lot of them, like, playing. Because that's not the truth in, like, real life. Even if Wilbur wasn't causing problems, Flat would have come along, started causing problems. Quackity could have ended up causing problems at some point. Yeah, like, everyone on the SMP, like, contributes to the issues of the SMP.
Like, Sam would have probably gone down the whole power trip route anyway if he had the opportunity to get power.
Let's be honest. He was already out there trying to get power. He wanted to revive Schlatt so he could have power. The whole
without the egg, you'd still have the Badlands wanting to take over the server, you know?
Yeah.
It's just, like, you can't really... I just think it's interesting.
Badlands is underrated, guys. I think Badlands is super underrated.
Badlands are cool.
They're the most... For a while, they were probably the most powerful faction on the Dream SMP solely because they were friends of Dream.
I just think it's interesting to think about the SMP and sort of like the different characters and the nations they've created and whether they've actually achieved anything that, especially L'Manberg, if they actually achieved anything they said they would, because L'Manberg didn't help anybody. Like, I get, like, it didn't provide anything that they couldn't have
L'Manberg as an institution.
Yeah.
Like, L'Manberg as an institution never really helped you. L'Manberg as a group of people did.
Yeah, it's nothing that could have... Nothing that L'Manberg achieved as an institution or whatever could only be possible
achieved.
And that's nothing that L'Manberg positively achieved that had a positive effect on the server couldn't have happened without L'Manberg. So, like, all of those characters could have still been friends. All those characters could have still interacted. The only thing that wouldn't have happened is you wouldn't have things like Doomsday or November 16th. Or
the Butcher
Yeah, you
Army.
can't exactly
Or Exile.
like destroy a friend group by blowing up the place that they hang out, you know?
Like 95% of the large conflicts later on in SMP, other than like the Disc War, are literally because of factions and government. And if you didn't have those on the SMP,
this is
things
why
would be fine.
the Syndicate is the best faction.
Yeah, definitely, because the Syndicate's more like a optional club.
Syndicate's a book club. It's not a government. It's a book club.
Yeah, it's not a government.
No, but that's. I want to say though that the Badlands set out to achieve power, and then they built a fucking prison.
Yeah, Badlands did achieve what they set out for, didn't they? Too bad.
Like, there's a bit from like the bad stream that he did after the prison break where he's like, I think it was Antfrost's stream.
I think it was Antfrost.
Where he's like, we owned Dream.
Oh, that was Antfrost.
Like, Bad says it in Antfrost's stream, I think.
Yikes.
I can't remember who said it. I just know it was in that stream.
That's such a yikes statement. You can't own people, guys.
I think Antfrost was the one who said that, but the whole reason the prison was built in Bad's backyard, or like Bad let the prison be built in his backyard, was because Dream said that the prison would be under Badlands' power.
And it sure was. Sam's.
It sure was!
Look what he did with it. Oh god, we can't rant about Sam again. Sam is... we need to have somebody else on.
We're gonna have to do like a whole other episode that I've been reading at some point, aren't we?
Yeah, we're pretty close, but I just want to say that there is this amazing fanfiction by this out of the blue C-Dream and C-Sam analyst that I haven't ever seen, but just popped out after Ant's last stream. But, I love you, whoever you are, I love you. You are just amazing. Just the character interpretation is fucking phenomenal. And it is called, let me pull it up.
We're having a spotlight in the episode, guys.
We are having a spotlight in the episode. This is on AO3 fanfiction, and it is called Where Lies the Strangling Fruit. It is currently at chapter 5, and it's basically about all the moments in the prison between Dream and Sam that we don't see. It's canon compliant, and it is, oh my god, it makes me want to shake Sam more than I already do.
If we are doing fic shout outs, I'm going to shout out one of my own fics that I posted recently. It's about Dream and puns after Dream gets out of prison, and it's called Bunker Pasta.
Anyone else want to shout something?
It is the closest thing I can write to fluff.
The only fan.
There's multiple references to torture.
The only fan fiction I've been reading lately isn't DreamXD. So I'm not gonna shout any out, but well, there you go.
Okay.
We got some fanfic recommendations for everybody.
I've been reading like Harry Potter spite fic.
I've been reading.
Like, it's always so funny when they just like explicitly like insult JK's writing inside the story.
I've just been
like, it's such a fun genre.
I've been enjoying some Marvel fanfiction recently. And some Disney, because I've watched Disney movies recently. Whatever.
Anyway,
that's
the end of the episode.
That's the end of the episode, everybody.
Actually, if you guys have any fics that you like or you'd like to recommend or that you've written yourself,
drop them in the comment section.
Leave them in the comments, reply to the Twitter post about this episode with them, whatever.
Yeah, give us stuff.
Or actually, on our Discord, we have a channel for fan content, so if you're on our Discord, stick it in there. See ya.
Bye.
See you.
Bye. Well, thanks for listening to the 33rd episode of Mellohi, and we hope you enjoyed it. If there's any topic you'd like to hear us discuss, feel free to leave a comment or find us on Twitter at Mellohi Podcast, where you can also ask us questions or just get updates about new episodes. We also have a Discord server that you can find a link to in the description. See you next time!